When there's someone suggests that money drives support for Israel, we must call it out.
This week is the AIPAC conference, which means it's the perfect time to smear Ilhan Omar. And that's exactly what politicians at this AIPAC conference have been doing. So the usual suspects, of course, have been criticizing Ilhan Omar, like Mike Pence and Meghan McCain. But also, the Democratic leadership is calling her out. Now, not specifically by name, but clearly the things they are saying are referencing Ilhan Omar. So first, let me play this first clip here from one of the Democratic leaders in the House, Steny Hoyer.
So, ladies and gentlemen, when someone accuses American supporters of dual loyalty, I say, accuse me. By the way, there are 62 freshman Democrats. You hear me? 62, not 3.
This is so dumb. These people are just looking for applause lines, but it's disgusting how easily they will sell out their own members of Congress for an applause. Now, let me quickly go over some of the things that he's referencing here. So he talks about how there's 62 new members of the House, not 3. The 3 referencing obviously AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. Now, the quote he pulls out from Ilhan Omar, this is something that she never said. So this is part of the problem with this entire controversy, this manufactured controversy around Ilhan Omar's comments. She's often misquoted, and the purpose of what she said is also mischaracterized. So let me break this down a little bit. First, so this is the actual Ilhan Omar quote that all of these politicians are referencing. So what she actually said was, quote, "I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country." She is not at any point saying dual loyalty, because dual loyalty in itself is in fact an anti-Semitic slur with a history behind it. So if she was talking about Jews discussing dual loyalty, yes, that would be a problem. But she never said that. She was referencing the problem with having to pledge allegiance to Israel to sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, where she should be looking at all of foreign policy issues through a neutral and objective light, not at, I can only be in the Foreign Affairs Committee if I agree that, yes, Israel is correct and we should continue to push back against the Palestinians. We should continue to dehumanize a group of people. We should continue to keep them in this open-air prison in Gaza. That's her problem. The right-wing Israeli government. This has nothing to do with the Jewish people. Now, let me go a little deeper into this with this story from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. The dishonest smearing of Ilhan Omar. She didn't accuse Jews of dual loyalty. She called Congress on it. As Paul Waldman writes, "Please understand, I address this issue as someone who was raised in an intensely Zionist family with a long history of devotion and sacrifice for Israel, but who also, like many American Jews, has become increasingly dismayed by the developments in Israel and by how we talk about Israel here in the U.S. The idea that taking issue with support of Israel means one is necessarily criticizing Jews as Jews ignores decades of political developments regarding the U.S. relationship with Israel. Supporters of Israel hasn't been a synonym for Jews since the 1980s. Repeat this. In America today, a supporter of Israel is much more likely to be an evangelical Christian Republican than a Jew. And here's the ultimate irony. Dual loyalty is precisely what AIPAC demands and what it gets. Again, it makes its demand not of Jews, but of every member of Congress and even of state-level politicians whom you wouldn't think would be conducting foreign policy. And it is working. Now, again, just so in case it's unclear still what Ilhan Omar's criticism is, she is criticizing the right-wing Israeli government's treatment of Palestinians, as well as certain laws that are on the books currently in a number of states that make it illegal to support the BDS movement, which is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that looks to put pressure on the right-wing Israeli government. Meaning that in various states, like in one instance in Texas, a speech pathologist lost her job because she refused to sign a loyalty pledge to Israel. She refused to sign that anti-BDS law. So this is clearly unconstitutional. This is against the First Amendment, against free speech. So understand here, that is Ilhan Omar's critique. Ilhan Omar's critique is not about Jews having dual loyalty. It's nothing at all about any of that. It has to do with laws that are currently on the books in the U.S. and the right-wing Israeli government's treatment of Palestinians. That's what it is about. Now, let me get to Chuck Schumer's clip here at AIPAC, which, again, references Ilhan Omar.
When someone names only prominent Jews as trying to buy or steal our elections, we must call it out. When someone says that being Jewish and supporting Israel means you're not loyal to America, we must call it out. When someone looks at a neo-Nazi rally and sees some very fine people among its company, we must call it out. When someone suggests that money drives support for Israel, we must call it out.
So this is one of the leaders of the Democratic Party comparing neo-Nazis in Charlottesville to the indisputable fact that money impacts politics in Washington. Regardless of the lobby, I don't care if it's AIPAC, I don't care if it's Big Pharma, I don't care if it's fossil fuels. Money impacts politics. Pointing that out in the case when it comes to AIPAC is not anti-Semitic. It's pointing out a fact that money affects politics, as we are currently seeing with what Chuck Schumer is doing on stage. So, and just to go a little deeper into this, because again, he misquotes or mischaracterizes what Ilhan Omar actually is discussing. I'm going to read this piece from Splinter News. So as Paul Blest writes, there's also another problem. If Schumer was actually referring to Omar here, she didn't ever say that being Jewish and supporting Israel means you're not loyal to America. While Omar did suggest in a February tweet that the pro-Israel lobby, like any other lobby in America, leverages its resources to convince lawmakers to support a pro-Israel agenda, she has never singled out Jewish lawmakers. The reason for that is simple enough. American politicians' unwavering support for Israel and hatred and condescension towards Palestinians stretches across political and religious lines. Evangelical Christians, in particular, have especially fucked up reasonings for their support of the Israeli government. Now, before I move on, since I'm sure some people are wondering what those fucked up reasons are for why evangelical Christians have unwavering support for Israel, it's because these evangelical Christians believe in the prophecy of the end times, where if Jewish people at the end of the world don't convert to Christianity, they'll be wiped out and sent to hell. That's an actual belief of evangelical Christians, which is why you've now seen multiple references to them in support, in unwavering support to Israel, because they believe this shit. That's why they're huge supporters of Israel, because they believe that this is what you have to have the Jewish people come to Israel to kick off the end times, and to have all these Jewish people killed by Jesus or God at the end of the world. That's what they believe. So understand how fucked up this is. Now, let me also just reference here what Nancy Pelosi said at AIPAC. I don't have a video of it, but again, it's along the same lines. So this headline here: without mentioning Omar, Pelosi at AIPAC decries myth of dual loyalty. Support for Israel remains relentlessly bipartisan, says House Speaker, a day after Pence tells confab Democratic Party co-opted by anti-Semites. Yeah, so while all this is happening, there are actual serious issues that should be addressed more than Ilhan Omar. So this tweet points it out. Okay, Ilhan Omar keeps getting bashed at AIPAC 2019. Fine, I get it. She took AIPAC on. It was going to lash back. But we're 6 months after Pittsburgh, an actually deadly expression of bias, and comparatively, it's not getting many mentions. So while you had somebody go to a synagogue and murder a bunch of Jewish people, only 6 months ago, that's barely being mentioned at AIPAC compared to Ilhan Omar's comments. So the people in the audience here And the speeches from people like Hoyer and Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they're simply looking for the easy applause line. It's not really easy to get an applause line when you talk about a bunch of murdered Jewish people, but it is easy to get an applause line when you're attacking a Muslim woman. And that's all this is about.